welcome back to Planner Craft if you're on the Planner Craft page, and Pretty Gets Gritty if you're on the Pretty Gets Gritty page and group. So, I'm Natalie, and today we're going to be using up fragments. So, first of all, let me know if you can hear me okay. And I'll just check mine. Yep, it says it's okay my end, so fingers crossed. If there are any issues, please drop it in the comments and hopefully I will be able to see. Hi Carol! Right, so I had a bit of a change of plan about what I was going to do today. I was going through my stash yesterday and I came across this tin. And it's been waiting, as you can see, quite a while for me to do something with it. So much so that it started to rust and I thought, that's just perfect level grunge that. So let's start off with that as a basis, and today I'm going to concentrate on creating the inside of my tin. So I thought it'd be really fun to work with that, and I'll leave the lid to one side for now. So I'm working onto a messy mat to try and save my cutting mat. Saves me keep swapping them over. And I've built everything around one image. So I'm thinking about colour scheme, so I've literally gone through all the scraps that I have by my desk, and I have a pile. And I've picked out anything that has something in common with this kind of colour scheme. I've done the same with my paints, so I have the Get Crackled in Naked, the Get Chalky in Miami, Pretty Whip Mousse Salty Sea, Pretty Whip Mousse in Blushing, Get Mentaled Gold Ice, I have some white gesso, and finally for our top layer I have some Pretty Patina Cream Black Pearl, which is this lovely dark, I'd say dark silver, but that's not what I mean, it's like almost like platinum, almost. So with that, I do have some inks off to the side in case I need that. But I thought it'd be really fun to show you the whole process. And morning Tracy, morning Thea. I'm not sure if I'm getting the chatter from the PGG feed. But if there are any comments that I don't address in stream, I will try and come back through and answer those typing. So I'm going to work from the back of my card. And to start with, let's use an erasable pen so you can see this. I'm going to trace around the outside of my tin. Now obviously the actual base part of my tin is actually slightly smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm tracing around that side, then I'm going to cut inside that line and test it out for fit before we start doing anything else to it. Okay. So I think the tin was a diesel one or something like that, if you're wondering where the tin came from. So an old jewellery one. And I'm just going to cut that out very roughly around the inside of that line, because we're probably going to end up trimming this slightly to make it fit better. Okay. So let's bring my tin back in, and if we have it upside down we can see the sort of centre base. So those corners need to be a little bit tighter, and we need to come in quite a bit. So I'm going to come in like this. I'm going to do a tighter corner down this way, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. Then measure again. Don't worry at the moment that it's not perfectly straight. We're going to fix that in a minute. But I just want to make sure that we don't take too much off. So that's the important thing. Don't try and take too much off in one go. Now let's sort out this corner down here. And again all the way across. and we still need to go a little bit more. And let's do this side while we're at it. Okay, so that corner there is about right. So let's trim that bit off. And there's a bit of a case of nibbling at it. If you want the quicker way, you can ink up the bottom of your tin and stamp that onto the back of your card, and that gives you the imprint. So I'm going to test that out in there. That's cool, because we want to make sure that it's lying flat. We don't want it lifting at the corners, otherwise when we start to layer things up it's not going to bend and it won't be able to stick as well. So before I get too far, I'm going to get some double-sided adhesive sheet. Ooh, colouring lots of lettering. What I do, if I've got a lot of die cutting to do, and you'll see this in one of my offcuts in a minute, is I will actually try and leave them in the card, or before I even cut them, I will actually spray my ink straight onto my card. It makes it a little bit easier rather than trying to colour individual letters. So this is definitely one for your non-stick scissors, and do keep your backing paper handy so that we can stick that back on so we don't waste the rest of the sheet. And I apologise if I do wobble off camera on occasion. It's quite hard to keep an eye. Okay, so that big piece we can put back on our sheet, and the little pieces we can let go. Hi Mum, hi Zena. Tracy, can you keep an eye on Pretty Gets Gritty comments for me and just let me know if I'm missing anything, because I'm not entirely convinced they're coming through. Okay. So with that done, we're going to leave our backing paper on for now. It's mainly just so that we have that ready to go, and because this is a little bit strong for my colour scheme, I'm just going to use a little bit of gesso, and just to save room on my desk I'm just using a little pot today. So new I can't get the top off. Okay. I don't really want to stab it, because otherwise it makes it really awkward to get it off around the edges, and I just but I'm going to have to. Otherwise it's going to be an hour watching me try and get that off. There we go. Let's try and get a little bit in there. Go on, a little bit more. Otherwise my poor scissors are going to end up gessoed as well. We don't want that. So gesso is basically white chalk paint. So if you haven't got any gesso, you can use some white chalk paint. And let's get my brush. So this particular little pot came from Lynette's Papercraft Society box, in case you're wondering. And it's quite a good little dinky size for a rather cramped desk today. So I'm not going to go full on coating this as if I'm doing a canvas. I just want to knock it back. So by using dry brushing, which is where we have very little paint on our brush, so I'm just going to take a bit more off, you're going to get a bit more of that texture coming through. I'm going to go back across as well, so it's not all about vertical brush strokes. I want to get a little bit on these edges. So it really doesn't take much gesso at all. Just going to turn that round so I don't end up with a dark patch in one corner. Where is Ian when you need him? Quite. He's on break in just about a few minutes. But yeah, I could have done with him to start the stream because it was playing me up, which you might have guessed by the fact that I did like the intro when usually I don't. But I was trying to give myself the opportunity to just check everything was behaving on streaming properly. There we go. So with that done, I'm going to pop the lid back on my gesso because we don't want it to dry out. And now we can work with ink, we could work with paint, but I'm going to start off with a stencil, and this time I think I'm going to go for the blushing. So you'll see in a minute, this is what I used to do the mould as well. So there's lots of fun things you can do with mousse. And I do have a little pot of water just here, so I can give my brush a quick clean, get that gesso out of those bristles. So with a mousse you can brush it on, you can use a palette knife, if you've got any colour shapers you can use those. So I tend to use those a lot if I'm doing things like edging around a embellishment, so that it has like a little frame. Do that quite often with sentiments. Yes, it's getting quite mucky. Come on. There we go. So, just going to get some kitchen towel and get that out a bit more. There we go. And I'll just leave that there. Stay. And I don't want this too thick, I just want it as like a sort of glaze layer. So hence I'm going with a brush rather than a palette knife. If you go palette knife you can get it lovely in 3D. Or it can go really subtle, just using a brush. I have to say, I think it's one of my new favourite products to play with in terms of paint. So I'm just going slightly beyond the stencil, so it's going to pick up that outside line, but I'm not going all the way to the edge up here because I'm going to save that for going next layer deeper. So the other advantage of going for a nice thin layer is that it's going to dry quicker, which is what we want. So let's get that done up. Get the brush clean, so that's the important bit. Keeping your brush clean is really important when you're using the mediums like this, so that you don't end up damaging your brush. I'm just stabbing it into the bottom of my glass, try and get it out of the bristles, and we can give it a good wipe and just make sure that we've got everything out of it that needs to. And hopefully, while I've been doing that, this will have started to have set enough for me to lift it. Ta-da! There we go. Here he is, the man of the hour. Can you pop it over there for me, please? Thank you. And can you pop that in the sink? Because that was good timing. Thank you. Okay, so next stencil. Tracy says hi. He says bye. So now to get a palette knife so you can see the difference. And I'm going to go for a sort of medium size. I'm not going to go for a big long one because I just want to do a section. And this time I'm going to go for the Salty Sea. This is the fun bit, getting the top off. Come on. Definitely can't stop this one. So, there we go. Kind of have to lift a little bit and then get your palette knife in there. So give it a little mix. Get some on your palette knife off the top. There we go. So you've got a little bit of a curl. Gonna hold that in place and we're gonna drag that down. So hopefully you can now see why I work on a messy mat. So when the mousse dries, it becomes really solid and 3D, which is cool. And it doesn't take very much, so I've still got quite a bit of product on there. So just wipe it off on the side of the tube. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of wipe with our damp kitchen towel. There we go. And let's peel gently. There we go. And we have our background. So I'm going to set that to one side for a moment. And I'm just going to very quickly give it a little bit of a clean. I'm also going to get it off my messy mat as well. There we go. Just because that application is a little bit thicker, so I don't want a bump left on my messy mat. Okay. Set that to one side. Yeah, that's what Ian would say. Yeah. He just has a knack of timing. So you do want to try and put your stencils straight in water after you've used the mousse. If you can't, then try and clean it as best as you can, like I just did. So while that's doing that, I'm going to start with, let's start off with a Get Chalky. And I'm going to use my heat tool to set this in a minute, just because I want to be able to show you the next layer. There we go. So let's get my brush. Needs a little bit of a mix, so just give it a little stir until you can see that it's all one colour. Stirring paint is always a good idea anyway, even if it looks like it doesn't need it, because some can be a bit misleading. So because I'm working directly onto an unprimed surface, you can see that colour's going straight on and straight in, so it acts more like a stain. As you build up your layers, it's obviously going to become more and more opaque. So you do what you think is best for your project. I'm going a little bit thicker with mine because I know I want to get that crackle over the top and I want that crackle to pop. So I need the colour underneath to be darker. Now, if as you're doing this you suddenly find there's a point where the paint starts pulling, then use your heat tool to dry what is still on your piece before trying to then put another coat on top. I tend to work in a crisscross so that I keep a nice smooth surface. That's important if you're going to stamp it, if you're going to stencil on it with something like ink where you want to do some ink blending. Try and keep it nice and smooth. And I'll talk for a little bit so that it starts to get a little bit drier. There we go. So I'm using really light brush strokes as well. So my brush is almost floating across the top, so that way it shouldn't pull. I'm going to seal that away. Now, if your application for your paint is quite thick and you go for a heat gun over the top, what you will find is you will get bubbling, which might be the look that you're going for, but if it's not, then try not to apply any thick areas of paint. So let's get the paint off the ferrule. There we go. Give it another clean just to get it out of the bristles. There we go. Still a little bit in there, otherwise it won't come off blue. And let's get a clean bit now. Still a little bit in there. You want your brush to actually show clear when you actually put it on the, like that. There we go. So if you tilt your head to the side and you can see a sheen across it, being chalky paint, you know that that is definitely wet. Chalk paint will dry to a matte. So let's give it a helping hand. So there we go. I do the edges too, just so that I don't accidentally pick that colour up when I'm applying the chalk. I've only got my heat gun on low rather than high, so if you have one of the old heat it tools that looks like a travel hairdryer, then that's ideal for this. I have a dual temperature heat gun, so okay. Stay. Okay, let's get our next layer on. So we've done our Miami, now we're going to go to our naked. Now with crackle paints, the thicker you apply them, the more obvious the crack will be. And And the best thing we can do for this piece in a minute is just let it sit to one side and set. Let's get a bit more paint because I'm starting to run out a little bit. And you'll notice I'm not being terribly fussy about brush strokes or edges. That is intentional, because when this cracks it's going to go and it won't matter. Okay. So I'm going to set that to one side and let that at least start to air dry before I even consider using a heat tool. Is the mousse and the blue stuff by Pretty Gets Gritty as well? Yep, it's all Pretty Gets Gritty. So, by the mousse, we have the Salty Sea and the blushing that I've used so far. And that's the Pretty Whip mousse. The other blue paint is Get Chalky, and the colour is Miami. And the crackle is Get Crackled, and it's Naked, and that's also by Pretty Gets Gritty. Okay, so let's get a little bit of water spray on my mat. And this is where you'll really see the difference between the Miami and the mousse, because the Miami will come off perfectly and the mousse is left behind. So I will attack my messy mat with some alcohol after, just to get those last little bits off. Also going to clean my fingers because I'm starting to get a bit mucky. Okay, so as I'm working with fragments, I've pulled out a few bits and pieces out of my scraps pile. So this one isn't so much a scrap as it's one that I did for a sample and just hasn't been used yet, and I thought it would be funky because the colours match. So that's the blushing, and the lilac is Slumber, and the other colour is Roman. So this bottom rose goldy beigey colour is Roman. Yes, definitely don't forget to clean your brush. So let's get more kitchen towel. So if you watch me regularly, you'll know that I have bamboo sheets for most things, but when it comes to things like acrylics, mousses, anything that has that kind of plasticky base that when it's dry it's going to be crispy, I don't tend to use my bamboo sheets for those because I like to be able to reuse my bamboo sheets, and I find that those just don't wash out. So if it'll wash out, it'll go on the bamboo, but if not, it's a kitchen towel. The kitchen towel I use is Oro, which is circular. It sits on a cone and it's handy for grabbing single-handed, so I don't need two hands to get it usually. Okay, so I want to use a section of this. So if we bring in our tin, bear in mind we've got our background and our bit of wood that's also going to either go in the top or it might go in the lid. We'll see how we go. I want to start to pull out my elements that I might want to use. So the dancer is never going to fit in a month for Sundays, so I'm not even going to think about using that. But this lovely section at the top here, we can definitely use that. So these are all moulded with Pretty Gets Gritty mediums. The mould itself is from Stamperia, And what I did was, and I'll show you the back of it in a minute so you can see this, I put the mousse in first, and then to fill the back section, rather than using a whole lot of mousse, I used some gel medium. Now the two did interact slightly, which is why I want to show you the back, but if you're patient with it, you can do first the mousse, let that set, and then put the gel medium after, so they don't interact as much. So you'll see bits here where it's gone like almost pitted. That's where the gel medium is mixed with the mousse. So if you want to go a bit more grungy, there's an idea for you. Whereas if it's more dry, when you put that gel medium in, you're going to get a smoother back and it's going to be pretty shiny. So if you want to use both sides to do something like a page in your journal, then you could do that. It's still got a whole load of flexibility to it, so if you want to shape it around a bottle, you can do. And it's cool. So I'm starting to think about my layout, and obviously I don't want to cover everything, so what I might do is just snip out the elements themselves, and then we can actually reposition those where we need to. So this one goes up to a point here, so I'm just going to snip that there. You can't tear it, so it'll just stretch on you. So you do need to use your scissors. And if you want to get really close with your cutting, just so that you lose that kind of background sharp edge, you can do. So I'm just going to try to take a little bit more out of there, so it's not quite so, and that's where I cut it, sort of thing. There we go, and maybe a little bit more over here. Just get in there and around there. So then we have this little embellishment that can sit down there. Now I have pulled out some offcuts of coloured card, lots of bits and pieces, so I can actually use the outside as something that I've cut out as a frame. So I'm just literally going to cut out one of these butterflies like so. And this card's got like a texture to it, so when we're actually creating our layers, we don't need to do too much work to that to make it fit in with all our textured sort of elements. So the butterfly might go up in that top corner. So the idea is with our layers, we're having little peekaboos to that layer underneath, but you may not see all of it. As you get further up, you're going to want to put the layers that you definitely want to see all of. So our very top layer is still going to be our photo. So we want to kind of almost bear that in mind, that, you know, it's going to be up here and you've got things going on behind it. But the more 3D you make it, the more you can tilt it and see more elements. So let's go for something that's going to bring in that pop of blue. So we've got the blue that's going to be sitting behind, then you're going to want to have some blue in that middle ground, and then possibly some blue in that foreground too. So let's see what I can make with this. So I like using the negative spaces. And this is just some sprayed plain white card that I've then gone over the top with some clear vinyl. So it's literally put it away, and I'll just trim off the clear bits. And let's cut that way. And we can have an A. We have an L. So hopefully you're starting to see how you can actually still use all those little bits that you've been holding on to. It's too nice to let go. So we have an L. And then we can decide whether we're going to go. We could go for a lace or lacy. We could go for the name Lacy and add that E in. I'm just leaving a little bit of border all the way around so that you can see the shape of that letter. And the centre of the letters don't really matter. So if you lose them, it doesn't stop you using it. It just means you have to adapt. So let's go for this. Oh, bye Thea. Okay, so I'm not missing anything else. So if you're wondering why I have to keep stopping and checking every so often, it's because the comments are behind me. Makes it a little bit tricky on occasion, but there we go. So we have lace. So once you've got them in there, if you're thinking, well, they need something behind just to pop up those letters, that's okay, we can do that too. So let's grab that. Need some scrap card. That'll do. You can see I literally throw very little away, much to Ian's annoyance. And this one has a texture to it too, so we can use it that way up. And just a normal PVA. Mine's starting to run out and need a refill. There we go. So I'm just going to apply that onto the card, and we can trim that out when it's dry. So next one. So the colours in this piece are Selfish Patina, then the Wild Honey, and finally there's a little bit of Butterscotch Adirondack that's dropped in from out my stash from yonks ago. And that's just literally flicked on just to get a few splashes of that little bit darker colour for contrast. So I will try and remember all the colours that I use in all the different offcuts, roughly. And finally that L. There we go. So if you want to cut them out with a white border, you can. I'm just going to go flush so that white is just going to be popping through the centres of our letters. So, what do you all have planned for the weekend? Other than going through your offcuts, of course. Oh dear. Is Carol teasing again, Sally? There we go. So there's our owl. And it's good to get your larger elements in as well, because the little tiny ones will go anywhere, but the larger ones, like this word, will be a bit more fiddly to fit in after. Might even take a little bit more of that one actually, just so it equals up that way. There we go. So there's an A. And I did pick out more elements than I know I can fit in, so that if I change my mind halfway through, I haven't got to go and sort. Because with the file I've got to get through, we'd be there for a while. Okay. I do wish things would stop moving behind me, it's very off-putting. Okay, so let's grab something to build up on. So let's go for this one. So when we're doing our layers, sometimes our little offcuts from the die cutting can help pop everything up. So hopefully by now our different pieces have dried and we can start to layer up. Ooh, that's exciting, Sally. I'm all eager to know now. I'm like, oh, go on, boy or girl? Or are they surprising you? Let's get this backing piece off. There we go. It's always the tricky bit, getting the backing paper off. So, lower this carefully in place, like so. And our mousse is pretty dry, so you can see you've got that little bit of a raise to it. So I didn't apply it too thick. If you want to go thicker, you can do, but I knew that I was going to be layering up over the top, so I didn't want to go too mad. And then we can bring in, which way should we go? Let's go this way. So you can see we've still got bits of our stenciling here, bits of our stenciling here, and you can still see those brush strokes. So we're not covering up anything too much that's going to make it unrecognisable as to what's underneath. Now I am going to put plenty of PVA on this because you've got that uneven surface. So that's one to not skimp on the PVA. And in we go. And we can gently press that down. Again, because our next bit is open, we're going to see little peaks of that layer underneath. If you want to use some 3D foam to pop this section up, you can do. Or if you have multiples of the same sort of shape, then you can layer it up that way. I am just going to trim off that top corner and round it off. So first of all I'm going to go round my glue and just check that that's going to be enough. That's it. There we go. Now if there's something like these ends where there's nothing underneath to support, you can either decide to use a little bit of that same moulding that's maybe not done quite so well but it's still the same depth underneath that you can hold it up with. You could use some craft foam and do it that way, or you can just press it down so it goes to that background, which is what I'm going to do for this one, just because in terms of time it will bond much quicker to the background than it will to the moulding, so that gives me a stable base to then start building up from. So again, bear in mind where you want your picture. So I'm thinking kind of over there, so you're still going to see that little bit of moulding that we did there for that one. You're still going to see that stenciling and then that mould there. So the butterfly, I'm thinking that top corner. Now, just to show you what I mean, let's do a little bit of a pop up on that one, because I think it's going to need the help. Now I've got some new foam squares and I find the backings on these are much easier to get off, so hopefully I won't be struggling to get these. Okay, so up into that top corner. Now with this one obviously you can't round the corner because otherwise you're going to cut into that butterfly, so just let it kind of rest that corner up against the rounded edge of the tin, and we're just going to give it a little press down like so. So we're getting that hint in there. Then with our lettering, that is the next thing to go in. So I'm going to start on the right hand side and work my way across. And again, because we don't know where that moulding is going to be, don't be stingy with your glue. And just press that down. And there will come a point where you think, oh no, I've ruined it. Just keep working through it. It'll all come right eventually. There we go. Air bubbles, don't you love them? There we go. In there and across there. So when you've adhered all these different elements, what am I doing? Oh, actually I can do that. Oh, I'll show you something else. I will show you something else. There's a good idea. You just know that I'm going to end up changing my design halfway through. It's me. You can also do your leafing as well. So maybe. Depends on if you're going to be a good boy and stick down there. I'm just going to hold that for a moment, see if we can get it to stick. Oh boy, the conversation's been going. Oh, the name's a secret. Do we think it could be a Sally? Now, if we were to put that picture in there, obviously it's going to cut out a bit of our word. So, what you could do is actually have it so that it works as a flap. And I'm suddenly thinking, the one thing I didn't pull out as a scrap was the acetate. So, what have I got? I have. Now this is a bit mad to use this. And I'm certainly not going to be using my Tim-Holtz scissors to cut it. But I have some craft plastic. Now, you can cut this on your scan and cut if you happen to know the exact dimensions of your tin, using your auto blade or your deep cut blade if you want to see them. So, Sharpie pen, and I know I'm going to get blue and mucky because I know there's not a chance that this is going to dry quick enough, but it's there to give me a guide. Roughly. Like that. Very roughly. Now, this craft plastic has a protective cover on both sides, and I'm going to try and leave a little hinge on this side. So, let's cut this straight up here. Because believe it or not, that wibbly wobbly line is supposed to be straight. Oh, dear. Can't get that stuff. And around. So I'm going to follow it round the corner, then I'm going to stop. I'm going to rotate back. Like so. And I want that to be kind of the depth of the tin. So fairly deep. And then we can cut straight along here. And I'm going to go all the way to the edge, just to make it easier rather than trying to handle a big piece of plastic. There we go. Now, you're going to want a craft knife and a ruler. And we're going to go between the 2 points of our hinge, and we're going to score quite deeply, but without going all the way through. Okay, so your piece should still be intact, but it should start to crease along that score line like so. So that means that when we put it in, it's going to actually wedge in there, and then we can actually put our picture on top, and we can have it as like a little lift. Oh, you're going to have to tell us as soon as you know, Sally. so we can do a special project then. I'm still toying with ideas for what to do for Lucy's celebration, so well, ideas on the postcard. Let's see if I can get this backing paper off. Get one bit off, and then the next bit, like, come on. So underneath this protective sheet, the plastic is nice and clear. So if you watch that and you thought, but that's really frosted, you still can't see through it. Yeah, you will. So because at some point I use this to go on the scanning cup, one side's already removed for me. So if you are cutting this on your scanning cup, just peel off the one side and put that unprotected side down onto your sticky mat. There we go. So I think I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to use some double-sided adhesive along this edge, just so it holds nice and quickly. Let's use this little strip just here. So I'm just going to chop that in there. Place it onto my hinge, like so. Then I can trim it up. So has anybody got any crafty projects they're considering doing this weekend? I'm just going to use that backing paper to just be able to throw those little snippets away. Now you want to make sure it's stuck down well. So if you look on the inside of your acetate, you'll see that there's like little bubbles. You want to make sure all those bubbles are gone before you try and stick it into your tin. So I'm just using my nail to burnish it. There we go. And then we can peel that away. I'm going to pop that into the fold of my tin like so. And then very carefully just get your finger in there and just encourage it into that fold. Okay, so now I still think it looks better on that left hand side, so I can do exactly the same. And also bear in mind when you're sticking things to acetate how it's going to look from the other side. So by using double-sided adhesive and something that's printed on the back like this, we're actually not going to have to conceal that much. So I'm just going to peel some of that backing back, and let's pop that on there. I've done lots of different techniques this week, so it's been fun. I did some photo tinting yesterday, so if that's something you'd like to see demoed, then let me know. But this one was pre-tinted. Okay, so I'm just tidying that up so that we don't have any excess adhesive around the edge. I'm going to stick that like so. Now, what we don't want to do is put a tab on this edge here, because when you're looking at it like this, it's really easy to think, oh, if I put a tab on there, there's something, well, I have something to lift it up by. But then if you try and put your lid on top of that, you're then going to damage your tab. So you almost need something that comes in like this. So let's see what we've got. And let's see if we use the pink, and let's cut out. Little semicircle, so let's get that a little bit neater, just a little, like that, and then I would put that round, straight edge to the outside like that, or you could put it underneath. So going back to our little scraps of adhesive, because waste not. Just going to pop that on there. Go for the right scissors. Trim it round. And let's go that way. I need to pull bits off my fingers, so I've got mucky mitts. There we go. So there's our little hint that we need to lift that to see the rest of it. And I would carry on building this up, so I would put in some little cogs, maybe a little clock or something like that, so that we keep on building up, and maybe even have a little 3D butterfly that goes in there. And you could also still build up inside here as well. So just bear in mind that whatever you put inside, we're going to see on that front section. So you could just use your larger area to hide detail that's in there as a little surprise. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and let me know if you'd like to see more. So with our wooden piece, that will, when it's dry, go inside the lid, and we can still build up more of the same on that side too. So we end up with a lovely little tin with lots of fun things inside. Yep, definitely different. So I've done quite a few different 3D things that are really fun this week, so you'll be seeing those soon. You're welcome to steal that idea, Carol. And if you want to do moving elements inside the tin, you can do. You just have to be a bit clever about how you make the mechanism work. So if you can imagine, that's going to be stuck in there. We're going to build up with more elements, and then that's going to go on top. So we then still have this front cover to do. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Let me know if you would like to see me finish that off next week, and I can always do that. So, as I'm over my hour now, I've been naughty. I will say bye bye, and I will try and catch up with all the comments in case I missed out any. I've stuck some Velcro stickers on, but the tab will let them know that they have to pop. Yep, definitely. The other thing that you can use in your albums, Carol, if you're talking about your album, is magnets. so don't be afraid to use them. You can get the little ones off Amazon, I think. But you want the kind of thinnest that you can, so you can hide them in the card of your pages. So I might show that as a technique soon. As I said, I want to do a mini book, so it might be that we do a week's workshop. So take care and bye.